All right. Thank you for joining today to hear about this exciting project that we're working on in the Reading Lab at McMaster University that combines our research with community outreach. So at the Reading Lab, we're really interested in language and aging. So we look at written language of aging adults to study their well-being. And this is how the corpus of cognitive and social well-being, or COSO-WELL, came to be. This is a collection of stories written by older adults collected by the Reading Lab. The idea is to see if written texts could tell us how someone is feeling. For example, linguistic markers of loneliness, how lonely someone is feeling. And the reason we're studying older adults specifically, this plot kind of demonstrates it. It shows how quickly age demographics in Canada are changing. So in 1970, you see that there were about 8 people aged 15 to 64, or young adults, for every person over 65, or older adults. And then last year, for example, there were about 4 young people for every older person. So the older adult population has doubled. And Canada isn't unique in this way. Many countries are seeing the baby boomer generation age, and the numbers of older adults are only supposed to get bigger over the next 10, 20 years. So it's a priority for Canada to keep older adults socially and cognitively healthy. And social isolation or loneliness is a big concern. We know that about 1/4 of older adults feel socially isolated, and we know that feeling lonely is not good. So actually, studies have found that social isolation or loneliness is associated with premature death, dementia, even an increased number of falls, depression also. So very not good. One study found that loneliness is actually as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And we confirmed this finding at the Reading Lab. And the pandemic, as you can imagine, has made this issue even worse. A lot of older adults were more isolated than ever while following safety guidelines and self-isolating, especially those that weren't digitally literate. So they didn't have the tools to connect with others digitally. On the bright side, though, the pandemic has brought a lot of attention to this issue that was already happening. So back to COSO-WELL. It's well known that language production reflects the speaker's mental state and their emotional state, and that the topics that someone chooses to speak about or write about reflects what's important to them and what has their attention in that time. So what we did is we asked about 1,000 adults over the age of 55 to write stories. And half of these adults wrote more than one story over the pandemic, like before the pandemic and over the pandemic. So we ended up with over 7,000 stories to analyze. And these are the prompts that we asked. So we asked older adults to write a story about a life event that took place in their distant past, a story that took place yesterday, and then a story that will take place in the future. For stories about the distant past, we expect that these would be very important or foundational moments of a person's life. Then for recent past stories, we would expect that these would be like day-to-day repetitive activities that happen to someone. And for stories about the future, we expect that these are hypothetical or imagined events. We also had a control story where we asked participants to describe the picture that's on the screen right now. So this is actually called the Boston Diagnostic Aphasia examination, or the cookie theft picture. It's often used in a clinical setting because it's a very quick, clear way to get the patient to show their language abilities. So you ask them to describe what's happening in the picture that's in front of them, and the patient's or the participant's description of the picture can be analyzed to see what kind of words they're using, how many words they're using, and if you're giving the test multiple times over a period of time, they can look at how the patient's language is changing. We also asked some demographic questions like their age, gender, retirement status, and a question about their health. For example, how would you describe your health in general? And then the options are excellent, good, poor, etc. And then they were also asked about their social engagement or loneliness with questions like, how often do you feel that you lack companionship? How often do you feel isolated from others? How often do you feel left out? This way we could compare the text that they're writing that they contributed with their self-reported feelings. So the first phase of these stories that we collected started in 2019, a year before the pandemic. And then the next phase was April 2020, so just 3 weeks after the global pandemic started. And then 4 months after, 8 months after, a year after, and then most recently 2 years after, but I'll just be talking about these first 5 stages today, so T1 to T5. And because these stories were collected both pre-pandemic and during, it gives us an idea of how lonely older adults were and then like continued to be throughout the pandemic. So after these texts were collected, we used structural topic modeling to find common themes in the text and group them together. So just zooming in here, you could see that there was a common theme of politics. So a lot of people were writing about voting and presidents and war. There was a common theme of retirement. So probably when talking about the future, they're talking about health, hope, retirement. And then a lot of people wrote about education also. So school, teacher, football, classmate. And the cookie theft picture, the Boston diagnosis, it was identified as a topic. So the structural topic modeling successfully identified people writing about kid, child, picture, and then cookie, sink. So the questions we asked were, what was the impact of the pandemic and what are the markers of loneliness that can be seen in text? So what did we find? I'll be showing a couple of examples. So we found for the theme of life and death, which was identified as a popular topic in the written text, when talking about the future, you could see that the popularity of this topic was changing over time. So if you remember T1 to T5, the different stages of collection, T1 was a year before the pandemic, so there was less written about life and death at that time. And then throughout the pandemic until T5, it became increasingly more common to be talking about themes of life and death. On the other hand, themes of outdoors or texts about outdoors became less and less common. So you could see T1 used to have a lot of texts, and then T3 and T4 a lot less. So people were socially isolated and not going outside, so they were writing less about it. And then T5, they're actually writing a little more. So maybe a little hope there. Another example of how the pandemic made a difference in the written text. So this plot shows how many COVID-related words like COVID, coronavirus, distancing, vaccine were used in the written text. So for the future and yesterday texts, there was a very steep increase in these words. So you could see here and here from T1 to T5, there was a very big increase of this. But for the texts about the past, so when people were asked to write a story about their past, there were no COVID-related words. And then for the cookie texts as well, when describing the picture of the cookie, people did not write about COVID. We also looked at the emotional characteristics of the texts that were written. So these are some examples of texts with the words that are higher in positivity in green, and then lower in positivity in red. So yes, it is Sunday and I'm off work due to the virus and being on a stay-home order, etc. We could use norms of emotionality to see how positive people were or negative in their writing. And we also looked at specific emotions of each text using the linguistic inquiry and word count. So this has lists of words related to emotions like joy, sadness, anger, fear, disgust. So what did we find? In this top plot, you see that the overall emotionality gets more negative over time. So in T1 and T2, the emotionality or valence was pretty high. And then from T3 to T5, there was a decrease. We also see that words relating to sadness and fear get more frequent over time. So these two middle plots, T1 and T2, so a year before the pandemic and 3 weeks into the pandemic, there were less words related to sadness and fear, and then over time, more. And then the bottom plot shows there was an increase in words relating to anger. Another interesting finding was around T3 is when people really lost it in a way. So 4 months into the pandemic, we could see that this is when people really started feeling the effects. So here it really shoots up the number of words relating to fear in the text around 4 months in. And if you remember, we also collected demographic questions. So they answered their age, gender, but also feelings of loneliness. And on this scale of loneliness that they rated, it was from 1 to 3, with 3 meaning more lonely. A higher score on the scale means more lonely. So what about these people scoring very high on the loneliness scale? Did they have specific linguistic markers? So yes, we found that greater loneliness inflated negative emotions and deflated positive ones. So the lonelier someone reported to be, the more negative the overall emotionality of their text was. So you could see that in the first top plot. So here, the 8 represents like more loneliness reported, and then the valence or the positivity goes down. And they also used more words relating to sadness, to fear, to anger, and disgust. So the more lonely, the more these words were used. One big limitation of this method of data collection is that a lot of seniors that are on the wrong side of the digital divide, they don't know how to use, or they don't have access to a computer or internet. So someone like this, while they would be very, very good to get texts from because they represent a very vulnerable population, they're not able to contribute this way because they don't have access to it. So we've partnered with Cyber Seniors and the Seniors Computer Lab to reach older adults like this. So these organizations make technology accessible to seniors, as you might know. They connect seniors with student mentors that teach them how to use these devices. They also host a lot of webinars like this one and activities, and they often provide tablets and cheaper internet to those who need it. And I've added a trailer for a documentary made by Cyber Seniors here, and I'll just play it.
You would want to learn from the internet?
Could you explain a bit about this
Facebook
something,
okay.
and having to be a friend?
I typed in www.email.com.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Have you ever heard of YouTube?
Yes, I've heard of it, but I have no clue as to what it means.
How many people here have used a computer?
Well, we have some teenage volunteers who are willing to teach you how to use the internet.
I think I'm too old.
Hope you have lots of patience, Henry.
Today we're gonna go on Facebook. Do you remember how to get there?
Well, I think I just, no.
All these things that I never even dreamed about.
I love it.
Welcome to a whole new world of information.
Every time we're together, Shreya just wants to watch cooking tutorials on YouTube.
There's a big game called Minecraft. Maybe we could cook something that looks like one of the characters in Minecraft.
Hi, everybody on YouTube.
We should have you doing a music video.
My teeth are as fresh as hot popped corns, my OG teeth.
All of the other seniors are so inspired, so we're gonna have a contest to see who gets the most views of their YouTube video.
Hello, YouTube.
Hello, YouTube. Hello, YouTube.
Today we are talking about travel.
Music.
Sisterhood.
Million Evelyn's is beating mine. I need more hits on YouTube.
This is the big moment that you've all been waiting for. The first prize, winners of the Cyber Seniors competition, goes to...
We all know how difficult it is to learn something new, but we really do feel that it can change your life.
So you got a friend request from...
Hello, Yeo. Who's he?
He's in the same program.
Hold on a second, you got a message. Sure, Edie.
Hello, Ellard.
Oh, dear.
Look here, Ellard is typing.
Oh, hello, Ellard. Hello, Shora.
Megan said, thank the people who taught you.
You're welcome.
Love you.
They see a program like this and they think it's an opportunity to get in touch with their grandkids and to communicate.
No matter how old we are, we do need a purpose for getting up in the morning.
There it is. Okay, so through Cyber Seniors, student volunteers are trained to work with and teach older adults, especially how to help troubleshoot different tech issues, which is a very common problem for older adults. And these volunteer hours get recorded, which is great for students both in high school and university getting recognition for their work. So not only are they getting experience working with older adults, they're also getting some kind of credit for it. So one previous joint effort with Cyber Seniors and the Seniors Computer Lab was Niagara Stories, which was a weekly online meeting where seniors and volunteers from Niagara and surrounding areas, so Hamilton, Brantford, they would get together once a week online to share stories. So older adults would get tech help from student volunteers while using Zoom. So they're having a problem with copy and pasting or finding the right tab or submitting their story. They have a student volunteer there to help them right away. And Niagara Stories had three main goals. So first of all, we're continuing to collect written texts that help us at the Reading Lab study language and aging. And this time we're reaching a very vulnerable population that we're not able to reach before. We're also helping older adults get on the right side of the digital divide because they're learning how to use online tools. And it's also a fun social environment for older adults and volunteers to share stories and meet others that are interested in creative writing. And this really helps to decrease feelings of loneliness. I should also mention these programs are completely free for participating older adults. So there's really nothing to lose. And this is one of my favorite texts that one of the older adults wrote. That's probably the most fitting explanation of Niagara Stories. So I'll just read it for you. This participant wrote, I read an article in Niagara this week, newspaper entitled Storytelling in Isolation, Explored in Niagara Project. Partnership will promote sharing and provide data for McMaster research. I like to write short stories on something that interests me, and often I like to put something in my story, memories of growing up on the farm as a boy. I have been doing this over the years. I've attended 2 meetings now and found them interesting and a new learning curve for me. Nancy, who's here with us today, by the way, hi Nancy. Nancy sent me an email with links and tabs and websites, how to create new tabs, how to bookmark web pages, We went to breakout rooms. That was new to me. I was assigned a mentor. After the first session, my mentor set up a one-on-one session through Calendly or Cyber Seniors. What in the world does cyber mean? My mentor cleared up a lot of these problems for me. One big one was, what is a bookmark? I can click on Safari, it opens my web browser. There on the left-hand side, I cannot see all my saved websites, but at the top of the page at the left there is the red, orange, and green button, and to the right of it is the little icon that looks like an open book when your mouse or arrow hovers over it. It says on a drop-down, show sidebar, you click on that, and then you see bookmarks. So you have to click on that, and then you see all the websites you have saved. I was able to read other people's stories. So I think that's really fun that this participant got a lot out of it. And we recently received funding from the Future of Canada project at McMaster University to continue these community-oriented writing programs. So we've partnered with Cyber Seniors and the Seniors Computer Lab once again to create LongStoryShort. So this will be a very similar program to Niagara Stories, but open to all senior adults outside of Niagara, outside of Canada even. It'll be completely online and free. And again, these are weekly, 6 to 8 week creative writing programs that teach you tech skills. We're currently recruiting senior adults to participate. We're also looking for volunteers. So if you or someone you know might be interested in participating in LongStoryShort, I've left the Reading Lab's email on the screen. Please email us. And I'd also like to spotlight and thank the team behind Go So Well. So Dr. Victor Huberman and Dr. Aki Kiralainen, Megan, Dr. James Gillett, and Dr. Ranil Sanadara, our collaborators at McMaster and our funders. Thank you.